Hello and welcome. This is Home Life for Extraordinary Impact. My name is Matt Barrios. I'm a husband, dad, researcher, and writer based in San Francisco, California. What I'm doing on this show is I'm researching global perspectives on home to help you figure out ways that you can transform your quality of life at home so that your home is a place of consistent growth, meaningful connection with other people, and really sets you up to make your greatest impact in the world around you. That's what we're up to on this show, and for that I get to interview some really fun and interesting people with different angles on home life. I get to hear a little bit about their own homes as well from their unique expertise, and today is no exception to that. Today I get to talk with Hilary Kinney, who is based in Maryland, and I'm just so excited to chat with somebody who is a specialist in project management and also parenting and is an author. So, I mean, just a stack of things that we could chat about today as we explore home. So, Hilary, thank you for taking some time to be on the show.
Absolutely. Happy to be here.
So, one of the first questions I like to ask people is, what are the things that you do at your home, perhaps even from this angle of project management, parenting, that your expertise? What are some of the unique things that you like to do to set up your home to make your greatest impact?
I like to make sure that with my son, it's clear communication about what he needs to do to help out as a family. So one thing I do is I've got a very simple whiteboard, and with a dry erase marker, I just write, okay, today's Monday, you have to take out the trash and you have to do your homework. Just so he can walk in the door, see what needs to be done. If I'm busy, we don't have to have a conversation. My husband can check it. And it just streamlines the communication, and it's a one-stop shop for him to go to on what needs to happen for that day.
That is so helpful, the whiteboard method. My wife grew up with a family that had a whiteboard, a check chart. And so you had your chores, you checked each day when you did what you're supposed to do and everything. And then it was incentivized with rewards and all of these kinds of things.
And then he was just asking me yesterday, Mom, what do I get for my allowance this week? And normally it's like $5 a week. I was like, well, this week I remember taking out the trash, so you get $3. He's like, okay. So he knows that, it stacks up with, what he gets done.
Oh, that's interesting. I mean, that sounds very, very helpful. Teaching responsibility, I think, sounds like a purpose of that, and kind of like awareness of what needs to happen and contributing your piece to the equation. What are the other things that go through your parenting mind when you set something like that up?
Well, communication is key. It's not just about creating, a process. It's about talking about it, getting people on board, designing something that makes sense for everybody. Because it's not helpful for me to come in with, a process that doesn't make sense for the family is too complicated. So I think when people think project management, they think, oh my goodness, that's like 500 spreadsheets in a computer program.
Yeah.
But it's not. At home, keep it simple. Just use, a really simple process and talk to your kids about what's helpful, or your spouse. So I think at the foundation of it is that it's a conversation, and it's the communication back and forth about what's working. Like, for example, when we had this list, I was mad at my son because he didn't get something done when I thought he was going to get it done. He's like, well, Mom, it would be helpful if you told me, like, when you expected me to get it done. And I was like, oh, good point. So then, we set the expectation, okay, before you go out to play or you have screen time, you need to get these things done. And that, nice. Cleared up that, miscommunication. So it really is a two-way street and ongoing conversation. And the thing that's interesting with kids is they're constantly learning and growing, so that their needs may change, or their ability to remember things. So now my son's 11, and it's easier for him to remember, oh, Monday's trash day, so I've got to take out the trash. So there's less of a need for that very detailed reminder. He's kind of on the cycle, oh, Tuesday's recycling. Yeah. I've got to do recycling. So it's also important to keep in mind the age of the kids and what makes sense for them, and how it may evolve over time. Because, they always surprise us. When you think you've got one thing down, like, it evolves, and then you're on to the next phase. So it's good to be flexible about it.
Stay flexible, stay attuned to what's going on with your kid, what they're capable of doing, and what they can't. I even love that, like, communication is a huge value for you, where you're willing to hear from your son, like, oh, I didn't realize when I needed to get that done by. And so you take it as, oh, that's something I just get to clarify now. And,
Right.
I feel like I had certainly those moments as a kid growing up where it was something like, oh, you should have known that this was happening. And just like, I just didn't know. All right. Like,
Right.
whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And that's actually the case with all of us often is we just didn't know. So I love the value.
Yeah,
of
good intent,
communication.
but unclear expectation.
Yeah, that's really valuable. You mentioned the developmental layer of it. So, like watching as your son's growing up, what he's capable of doing, or paying attention to, or remembering. So, like, what was that like in kind of earlier phases? When did you start? I guess I'm really interested in this from the angle of I have a 1.5-year-old.
Okay. Yeah.
And I know, like, I'm slowly teaching her, like, to put her shoes back, like in the little bin where we put her shoes at the front door, right?
Right. Yeah.
And now she loves it, and we cheer for her every time, and she's a big fan, and, it's, like, great. But how has that developmental process played out, parenting and project managing with your kids?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a little further along in the process, but it's definitely a journey, and it's really important to keep in mind, like you said, the developmental stage of the kids. And when they're super young, they can't do a lot. We're taking care of them. Yeah. We're teaching them. We're more in teaching mode. Like, we have to show them how to put their shoes back. We can't just tell them how to put their shoes back. And they could probably handle like one thing at a time, and just putting their. They're going to be a lot less consistent. In it. One thing that I struggled with is I thought my son was further along than he was. Like, I tell him to do 3 things, and he would get flustered, and it took him a while to tell me, Mom, I need you to tell me to do one thing at a time. So I sort of assumed that he could do that, but he couldn't. So I had to, like, back it up and be like, oh, I really have to be careful about how much I ask him to do.
Yeah.
And the other thing that's with really little kids, like, when he was really little, I did pictures, like, did pictures of, like, a little trash can, or, pictures of a little book if you have to do reading for homework. So the pictures are really helpful for the little kids. Or some kids are really tactile, depends on their learning style. So I've seen some people have, like, 2 mason jars, and they have, like, a popsicle stick with, a book on it, or it says, a picture of a book, and you move it from one mason jar to the other. Or you can do that with balls, or, different things. So depending on what kind of resonates with your kid and what kind of their learning style is. My son was okay with seeing it, and that worked well for him. And, he really liked the check, and he is super motivated by rewards. So, but the other thing that's interesting is we've had to switch up the rewards too. So, for a while, a trip to the dollar store worked, but then, that kind of got bored. So then we had to up it to, like, a trip to Five Below. And then it was screen time, and now he's really interested in cash. So it kind of depends on, where they are and what they want to do. So yeah, you can adjust it, based on their personal preferences too.
That is, you are, like, giving some pro level wisdom on how to raise children in this way. I'm personally very, very thankful for it. So this is so great.
Good.
And I know this is a passion and expertise that you have, which is really approaching parenting, family life, setting that up in order for it to be, well managed and well functioning. How did you get into this kind of this work or focus or passion?
Well, I've been a project manager by trade for 18 years. I'm a certified professional project manager. I work for a Fortune 500 company. So I've done a lot of really big, like, $1 million projects for big, like, corporations globally. Like, you roll something out across, 7,000 properties around the world. Wow. So I was used to, like, these really big projects. And, they kind of say once a project manager, always a project manager is kind of how you think. Yep. And the thing about project management is it's a repetitive process. Like, I use the same process or foundation for each project I do at work. It's just customized, and the tasks are different for each project. So when you get your project manager certification, you're learning a process for managing the work. And I didn't really start thinking about it, how it applies to home life, until the pandemic hit. And all of a sudden, all of us parents had all this work at home. We were teachers. We were trying to do our regular job. We had to provide all the after-school activities and aftercare because everything was closed. So I was like, wow, this is like work when you have a ton of things to do and you have to figure out to get it done in a very efficient manner.
Yes.
So it just started with a thought and a LinkedIn article. I was like, hey, I hear a lot of us are struggling. Here are some thoughts of things I use at work that I think could help us in this environment. And it just started gaining traction and people started getting really interested in it. And it just kind of snowballed from there into speaking engagements and a book deal and just ongoing requests for information. So it's funny when people hear it, they're like, oh yeah, that makes total sense. Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, I guess you're right. It just took us a while to put the dots together.
Exactly. I feel like that's a common experience when you have such deep expertise like you do in project management, and then you have the ability to apply that to these different projects, but also different domains, right? Mm-hmm. Not only in work domains, but also in home domains, family life, so on. I imagine everything, right? Vacations and so on.
Right. It's unlimited what you can apply it to. Yeah. I have that example in my book, How to Plan a Family Vacation with Project Management. That's a big project.
Well, I mean, could you just give us a little taste of what would be, maybe even zooming on that idea of planning a vacation using some of your project management skills? What would that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's something we call scope in project management, and it's basically, I boiled it down to like your one-page scope. You want to get on the same page, right? So you want to talk to your partner or whoever you're going on vacation with, like, okay, what's our idea of our projects? You all want to agree, right? You don't want someone planning to go to the beach and the other person's planning to go to the mountains, and then you come together and you're like, oh, wait, we didn't think about that. So it's all about getting on the same page. So, and you can just break it down into the who, what, why, where, how, right? Like, why are we going on this vacation? Who's going? What are we going to do? How much is it going to cost? So it's just basically having that having that conversation so you all understand, first of all, is really important. So that's basically scope for you. What are you going to do? How long is the vacation? How much money do you want to spend? That's your budget. Yeah. So it's a very clear connection, which is kind of fun.
And getting on the same page with that, having the dialogue, really figuring out oh, actually we might disagree on that thing. So how do we come to a compromise on that or what have you? Yeah.
Like my husband, he's like a big time adventurer. And I like adventure, but I also like my beach relaxing time. Yeah. So I remember on our honeymoon, my husband was like, oh, we're going to do like zip lining and then we're going to do a cave thing and then we're going to do this. I'm like, hon, we'll have just gotten married. I need to chill out on the beach for a couple days. So that was our first big marital thing we had to figure out, you know? Yeah. And we were basically figuring out the scope of our honeymoon project, right? What makes sense for the people involved and what are we going to agree to so then we can move forward together to make it happen. Because, if someone's not on board, it's a lot harder to make that happen or, then issues come up later and it's better to just resolve it at the beginning. And then it's much easier to move forward together as you're working towards that same goal.
Hilary, you are you are almost repeating an experience from our lives too. When we were honeymoon planning, it was so wild. I think very, very parallel situation. My wife is very active, very adventurous. Her idea of traveling involves climbing mountains. That's just a must. I'm a little bit more laid back. I love beach and a book and going swimming in the ocean. That's prime time for me. So we had that conversation. What would we like out of our honeymoon? I don't think we got to the full clarity required to really be oh yeah, this Airbnb that we got in Tahiti, it had rocks for floor, and that's not the kind of roughing it I was looking forward to for our honeymoon. I'm just flashing back to all those years ago on our honeymoon. Yep. Yeah.
And it's that communication that improves the quality of your life, right? When you're sort of thoughtful and keep this in mind. So my husband and I just went through a kitchen renovation and having that conversation, well, what do you want? How much money do we want to spend? When do we want to do it? What color do we want the cabinets? And, coming to that together. And obviously we may not agree, but we figure it out together what the end product is going to be. And then, it improves your marriage because you're talking about it. You're surfacing things early instead of it coming out as a disagreement later. So, and it provides, the thing I love about project management is it provides a way to have difficult conversations more easily. Because you can just say, okay, let's talk about what's the plan for this project. Let's run through the who, what, why, where, how, when. And you can just have this conversation about it, and it sort of takes the emotion out of it. And you can have a more, rational conversation before you're all keyed up and upset because, this difference came up. So it's being really proactive in the planning up front to reduce those disagreements or that confusion later. And then it's supported by this organization piece later once you've agreed on it to make sure that everything gets handled and, it executes smoothly.
Hilary, I'm learning things from you right now that I need to apply to my life. So thank you so much. You are the perfect guest to have on this.
Good.
Okay, so you go through this process of defining the scope, communicating through it and everything. What would be the next step in a project management situation?
Yep. So then you just start writing down what needs to happen. You start documenting the tasks. At work, obviously, it's a little more robust, but at home, I often just use the notes function on my phone. Or, depending on, how complicated it is, I may, whip out, an Excel spreadsheet and just start, writing things down just to keep things in mind. Because it's easy to forget if there are a lot of little steps involved. So it's basically just write down what needs to happen. And then once you've written down, and then it's an iterative process. It's ongoing because stuff is going to come along later. Oh, I got to add that to the list. We don't want to forget that. Yes. So you add that in. And then depending on who's doing the work, you decide who's going to do it. My husband loves vacation planning, so he'll do a lot of research. I work for a hotel company, so I'll book the hotels. I like to cook, so I usually handle the restaurants. So we kind of do it based on what our natural talents are and interests are, which is easy. And then if there's something neither of us really wants to do, like trip insurance, we'll sort of maybe draw a straw and decide who wants to figure that one out.
Yeah.
So then it's deciding who does the work after that.
That makes sense. Okay, so you figure out scope, then you create the log of the tasks that need to happen, and then it's delegating the tasks to, I love that thought of according to what people's interests or capabilities are too, according to each other's strengths, versus you got to do it even though you will not enjoy this and it'll be very inefficient and so on.
And it also depends on what people have going on. If I'm really busy at work, my husband will be well, let me take that. So it's a conversation, or if I know that he's, got a lot going on, then I'll take something on. So it's it's the broader awareness. We call it resource capacity planning in project management. Woohoo!
Yeah.
Throw that term around. Don't say that at home, but that's, it's just keeping in mind, what sort of else is going on. Yeah. And then it's also important just to keep that in mind in your family in general. Don't do too much when, at the beginning of school, or eventually when you get there, or if you have a big work project, don't be planning something major going on at home. Just be mindful sort of the ebb and flow of your schedule, and when you have busy times, when you have slower times, and try to slot things in just so you're not overwhelming the family with too many new projects or changes at once, which is really helpful. Because at your age group, that reduces tantrums for your young children. Because they express their frustration through tantrums. With adults, we get frustrated and, we get overwhelmed. So just keeping that in mind overall, what does your family have going on before you start scheduling these projects is really helpful.
Very, very thoughtful. And I imagine planning for margin for those unexpected things, can be really important as well. I know me and my wife, we tend to try to pack in as much as possible. Then we find ourselves in these overwhelmed situations where, maybe we could have given ourselves an extra 20-minute buffer and then everything would have been fine,
Right, but, I'm always trying to pack in as much as possible.
Yeah. This is so helpful. So now I want to kind of zoom in on maybe your home. I feel like we've sort of been talking about it from the project management angle, but what are the sort of places that you have called home over the course of your life? Where have those homes been?
Well, that's a bit of a story. I guess growing up, I'm what you call a global nomad because I'm the daughter of an American diplomat. So I actually grew up in California, lived there for 3 years, then DC for a year for language training. Then we went to Saudi Arabia, back to DC to the same house, which is actually Wise on my parents' side because they rented it out. Then over to Poland for 3 years, back to DC. Then I went to prep school in Massachusetts, college in New York, spent some time in Colorado, and then back to the DC area since college.
Wow.
So
The global diplomat life, it sounds like it would have a lot of adjustment to it and a lot of exploration and kind of like learning to adapt. And that sounds really great in some ways and also really challenging in other ways. What was it like for you, maybe even as a kid or teenager and so on, to make these places home along the way? What did you learn about making places home?
Well, it's kind of interesting. It was kind of nice because I have 3 brothers and sisters, so we were sort of like our own little pack wherever we went. So we always had our family, and my mom was a great cook, and she always embraced the culture where we were moving to. So it was always kind of fun. And my parents were very adventurous, so we're always, like in Saudi Arabia, we would go camping, and in Poland, we would go hiking, and we'd see foxholes from World War II. And so they really embraced the culture, which I think is a really good example of how you make home, right? Is you really kind of dive in and embrace it. And I've found that I've kind of continued that. They say people who grow up that way, either they keep that cycle of moving every 2 to 3 years, which is my brother, because he's continued the diplomat lifestyle. Or me and my sister, we've like stayed put in the DC area. We're like, we love to travel, we'll go on great trips, but we want our home base. Yes. So, but I still have that mentality of, wow, I really want to dive in. I really want to be active in the community. I really want to get to know people. So it kind of gives you this mindset of exploration and really interest in other people's and other cultures too.
That's really cool, especially like living in a place like Saudi Arabia or Poland, like that's different from DC, right? And so there's a lot of adapting linguistically, culturally, different social tells for how people are supposed to be, more or less, right? Like unspoken rules about social life. Yeah.
What's appropriate?
Any that you came across in that way that like were surprising, maybe socially for you as you were growing up?
Well, I have to say, as a kid, I was kind of shielded because you're sort of given more of a pass. But I remember being in Saudi Arabia and walking through the souk with my mom. And, in Muslim cultures, it's very conservative what the women wear. So you have to be covered from your wrists down to your ankles. And I think perhaps either like half an inch of her wrist or half an inch of her ankles was showing. And so, she was getting sort of jeered a bit in the souk about that. So it's just kind of interesting. As a kid, I could run around in shorts and a T-shirt and I was fine. But the expectation was different for, people that were older. So it's just a very different culture. And then we were recently in Mexico, and I was also, it was interesting. The dress code was much more conservative. Like, I rarely saw women in shorts. And I had brought mainly shorts and maybe 2 pairs of pants, but I spent my whole time wearing pants because I wanted to be respectful of that culture. So it's made me more thoughtful. We're going to Africa in 2 weeks. And so I was like, well, let me check and make sure what the dress code is. And we checked, and women are supposed to wear more pants. So I just went shopping yesterday to get pants. So it's like you said, it's like being aware of what's going on around you and, being in that culture, but being respectful of, what their traditions are too.
Yeah, that is really important to do in order to show respect to people. And also it allows that much more opportunity to embrace being in a place for all it's worth, to learn from it and, take in some of the values that are worth appreciating, in these different places.
Yeah.
I'm curious if you had opportunities to visit people's homes, or if like the feeling of home was actually different in these different environments as well.
Well, it's interesting, like, in the warmer cultures like Saudi, it's much more open feeling, right? Because you want the natural air in, or big courtyards. I just remember really big courtyards. And, in Poland, it's a colder climate, so it's a little more cozy. And, the houses or the apartments were a little smaller. But I just remember everyone, just being so warm and so welcoming. And I remember even in Saudi when we were camping, we would go out in the desert and camp, and we set up camp once in the middle of the night. We couldn't really see where we were. And when we woke up, we were really close to a Bedouin camp. they live in tents. They live in tents in the desert. And they came over and they spoke with my dad and some of the other, men that we were with. And they were speaking Arabic together. So it was just this really nice way to see it. I just remember being in Poland and welcoming into our homes and sharing their food and their traditions. And just this really lovely tradition of just, embracing people from around the world, and just that openness and I think it was like curiosity. They're curious about us. We're curious about them. Like, who are these Americans? So I love that curiosity both ways of people just wanting to find out, what do you like? And, what's it like where you live? And what do you do? And that sort of thing.
I love it. Gosh, I can't imagine what it would be like to wake up next to like a Bedouin camp. How incredible. Like, that's a story to tell that you'll get to have for all of your life. How incredible.
Yeah, really, really fortunate.
So this is a little bit of a shift of you turn around the corner, but I'm curious, like a little bit of a this and that kind of game for us to play. When home is going really great, what does that look like? When home has gone sideways, what does that look like for you?
Yeah. So when home's going great, I think an organized and clean home really helps sort of set that tone, kind of like that peaceful tone. When things are a little disorganized, makes me feel unsettled. So organized, happy, clean. We have housekeepers come every 2 weeks, which really helps us a lot. Just, stay on top of things. And I know that, the deep clean is getting taken care of. When things aren't going so well, I say going through the kitchen renovation was rough. We had people in our house from like 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Like, we didn't have any like quiet, like family personal time. It was noisy. It was dirty. There was dust everywhere. We couldn't get in our kitchen or get through our living room or use the bathroom downstairs. And it was hard, and it, impacted our schedule. So, I'd say when things are a little more disorganized, and I was really tired, we're all just tired because you couldn't really get that rest when you're at home and you're in your own space and you can just kind of, disconnect a little bit and take a deep sigh of relief. Because, we were sharing our space with other people. So, that was a challenging time. And now I really appreciate having our house back.
Yeah.
That we can just sort of enjoy ourselves and have just that like family time together.
That's interesting. I think because home is especially for the relationships that happen in the home. And so anything that kind of throw that off, like having people in work doing renovations for 8 hours a day or whatever, like that will actually get in the way of being able to have quality time connection. There's a sense of things being out of order. I could see how that would add up to, gosh, things just feel off.
Yeah. Can't wash dishes. Make dinner out of the microwave. It's like eating out a lot. Yeah, it was a lot.
Oh, yeah.
But now we have a gorgeous kitchen that we're very happy with. So.
Oh, so good. Congratulations on the gorgeous kitchen. That is so satisfying, I'm sure. Were you doing the project management for the reno? What did that look like?
Well, you know what? We hired a general contractor, so I didn't have to do the project management. So he was the project manager, and he would just ask us questions. So it was a really nice way to handle it.
That is so good.
Well, my husband and I, we talked about the budget and, what we want to spend. But, when it came time to do it, we have no expertise in home renovation. So it's better if a true professional handles it.
Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. I'm curious now, another angle on this. In regards to your possessions, things that you own, the things that you have hanging up around the house or stored away or whatever, do you have any prized possessions, things that you really love and cherish, and what are they?
Well, we really love the outdoors. We love going camping and going hiking and biking and walking the dog. And that brings us, a great sense of peace and appreciation for the natural world. So we like to bring that into our house. So we saved up some money and we got a live edge coffee table. I think it's cherry.
Oh, wow.
And it's just, really beautiful slab of wood with, wood underneath all the way through. And just looking at it, it just makes me happy, and it just reminds me of the beauty in nature, which makes me feel peaceful. So it's like this cue to me that just brings me joy and peace.
That's wonderful. And it represents, it sounds like, this connection to nature and the beauty that you find there. You said that it brings you a sense of peace, too. And that's so cool, the way that these things can be visual cues, or these things that we use can be reminders of, or even prompters of a certain state of mind. That's really nice.
And then in the kitchen, we always have a really beautiful stone countertop and backsplash. And that too, it's just very zen, and we have like natural wood cabinets that are light. And, we sort of bucked the trend. The contractor's like, well, everyone's doing white cabinets. And I was kind of like, I don't want it that bright, and they're like, well, navy blue is also really popular. And I was like, So we went with our instinct to go with the natural tones, and we love it. And it just brings us, again, that sense of peace and joy. And I walk in, I just kind of go, it's just very peaceful. So I think it's important to like think of what, you don't have to follow the trends, just, go with it's your home and make it, something that brings you joy.
Make it what you want. The things that will, there's something about things being on trend that, sure, like it is on trend now, but it won't be on trend in 10 years.
Right.
Like,
and who's living there?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right.
Who's got to live with it? Yes.
I'm curious if you have a favorite place in your home.
Favorite place? Kitchen. I love to cook. So I can just go in there and just, cook. And that's my happy place. My husband does not like to cook. He loves to read, so his is the study. So we each have our own spots. My son is anywhere we are, and then my dog he prefers our bed, which he shouldn't be on, but, but that's what he likes.
Yeah. The fact that it's forbidden just makes him like it more, exactly. I'm sure. Get off. No. This is where I want to be.
Right. So comfortable. Much better than my dog bed.
Oh, yeah, seriously. That's great. So you like cooking. How did you get into cooking? What were the kind of like gateways into loving that and appreciating that for you?
I think it came from my mom. My mom's love of cooking, really embracing the cultures where we were and trying new things. Yeah. So it started there. And it's actually why I went into the travel and tourism industry initially, is I wanted to cook. So, I was knocking on restaurant doors as like a 14-year-old. They're like, sorry, we can't hire you. You're too young. And so that's got me started in hospitality, which morphed eventually into corporate project management. But at one point, I actually went to culinary school for pastry. So that's kind of my thing, is desserts.
What in the world?
Yeah, for real. Yeah.
You went to culinary school for pastry.
Yeah, I know, right? So and now my son and I are gluten-free. So I use my talents to create gluten-free desserts for the two of us.
Well, that's great.
But I can convert anything he wants. Oh, Mom, I want to eat that. I was like, well, I'll figure it out. We'll make it gluten-free. Don't worry.
Hilary, I have chills about what a talent that is. That you are a trained pastry chef who can convert anything into gluten-free. Wow. Your son is extremely lucky.
He is, yes. He's a lucky boy. And I'm a lucky mom.
Yeah, so great. And I also love that trajectory from hospitality and pastry chefing into project management. Like, that is an interesting career path.
Yeah, you never know where you're going to end up.
So true. Okay, so one other thing that I read about you kind of prepping for this episode is that you are invested in helping people create high-performance family cultures as well, so that their family functions as a really great team. I think this aligns for me in the sense of being interested in the connection between home and personal growth. Could you tell me more about what investing in that looks like for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's the foundation of all this work, this project management piece, because it doesn't work without the people. And your starting point is building that high-performing team and that culture within your family. Because it's not about the process, it's about the people and working together. And at home, like you said, it's focused on love. And at work, we don't... we roll out projects and we do team building. So it's kind of similar at home. You can kind of like put that mindset at home and think of, okay, how can we build a really strong, high-performing team within the family? And there are things you can do to do that, just like we do at work. It's just a little different angle. And being thoughtful, how are you spending time together? Are you doing activities that help you learn more about each other? Like, how intentional are you are you being about, doing things together? And then the other really important piece is that conversation, that communication back and forth, and bringing your kids in early in conversations about how things are going. How do they want to help you problem solve if things come up? Like, when they're old enough, what's their opinion on vacation? If you dare ask them and you can accommodate. It's building in those communication channels and that time together to create this team at home. And part of that can be, if you want to get, sort of this advanced, is, you can start thinking about, okay, like, what's our vision as our family, or what are our values, or do we want to talk about those, or, do we want to put them on the dining room wall? How are we going to treat each other, and how do we want to have those difficult conversations? So they're all very intentional things that can be done to create this positive environment, because it's no fun if someone walks in with an Excel spreadsheet and says, this is our new task list. That is not the way to do it.
Sure.
Like, it's about the relationships and building an environment in which people are working together. And ultimately, it's about helping our kids learn these life skills so that they can be successful adults. So we're kind of bringing them along for the journey so they can learn from us. And then eventually we're handing the baton to them and say, okay, you can create your own home with your own culture and your own environment in the way that you want. Yeah. These are how I've equipped you to do that. And, eventually they can create their own home life that they want.
That's so cool. I think that sort of mindfulness and intention towards preparing a child's character and skill set in how they go about their work, how they want to treat people, what are the values driving us, all of that. I think that's really a pretty cool way to think about it and be intentional about it.
Yeah.
So I've really, really enjoyed this conversation. We're kind of like maybe moving towards wrap up here. When you think about like this kind of intersection that you're interested in, project management, parenting, and anything, do you have, if you were to give like one piece of advice to folks in ways that you think would result in a real transformation in their home, what piece of advice would you impart?
I would say start with a conversation around the dinner table. Just have a conversation. Oh, what's going on this week? Or what do we need to plan for? Or, what do you think we should do about this? And start having that conversation together over dinner to, start practicing talking through things and just keep it really simple. And, you can ask 3 questions if you want, like what went well this week? What didn't go well this week? And what do you want to focus on for next week? So your kid may say, I really love the recess this week. Snack time, I didn't like the potato chips that you sent. And, next week I want you to send Oreo cookies. So,
yeah.
So just a very silly example of, just bringing them into the conversation. And then you can apply that. Okay, if I don't want my kid to have a tantrum at school, I'll send something besides those potato chips that he doesn't like. So it's just sort of starting to build that muscle. And just keep it very low key, very casual. And then have those early conversations with your spouse if you have something coming up. Like, if you're planning for a school activity or a vacation or a renovation, have those conversations early and just talk it through to completion of, how do you want this to go? And, how do you want to build it together?
I love it. That is such a valuable thing. Conversations around the table that can help us figure out the plans moving forward and all of that. What's working, what's not working, what do you want to try new?
Problem solving together. Yeah, it's all building those really important muscles.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Hilary, for being an awesome guest. Excuse me. It's been a really great conversation. I learned so much. Several times my mind was blown by the things that you had to share. Thank you very much. If others are equally as interested as I have been in this conversation, they want to hear more about what you're doing, what's a good way for them to follow you?
Absolutely. So everything links out from my website, which is projectmanagementforparents.com. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, love to connect on LinkedIn. I also have a book, projectmanagementforparents.com, that has all the details, 25 real life examples, and a bunch of tools that you can immediately apply.
That's incredible. Projectmanagementforparents.com. I will make sure to include that in a link in the show notes, as well as a companion blog post for this episode. So thank you so much, Hilary, for being an awesome guest. And I really appreciate you giving us the time. Thanks for listening to Home Life for Extraordinary Impact. I hope you enjoyed listening as much as I enjoyed putting it together for you. Please take a moment to rate it, like it, and subscribe wherever you have listened or watched. If you really loved it, check the link in the show notes to become a premium subscriber to support the ongoing work of this project and to unlock some exclusive premium episodes. Home Life for Extraordinary Impact is a project of Home Life Design Lab. Find out more at homelifedesignlab.com, where you can sign up for the newsletter and follow along on Instagram and TikTok. Thanks.